Hello and welcome to MC Webinars. Thank you for joining us today. The topic of the webinar today is basically looking at how you can be curriculum ready for 2021. If you have questions, please put them in the questions box, but we will follow up with those after the presentation, not during. You will receive slides and also the recording as part of a follow-up after the presentation. Today we have Anthony Horn with us, who is the Sales Director for MZ. And I'd like to hand over to you. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Debbie, and thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's webinar. As Debbie said there, I'm going to talk about using skills data in your curriculum planning, as well as for things like bid writing and your business development work, and why perhaps it's more important right now than ever before to understand what really is happening in your local area so that you're serving your local labour market and community to the best of your ability. I'm sure you're all thinking about and are involved in curriculum planning right now. So whether that be following your standard planning cycle or planning bespoke provision to help with potential redundancy and reskilling needs locally. There are also various tender opportunities around right now that I'm sure you're aware of, things like the skills bootcamp tenders and various other bidding opportunities for adult funding. So whether that be via LEPs or combined authorities or directly from ESFE in some areas. And then of course we also have the impending FE white paper, which will surely have some reference to regional skills needs and the need for providers to show how they are responsive to those needs. And that's of course something we've also seen Ofsted looking at in more recent times. So there's really a lot going on in this space, and I think a clear call to action for providers and other organisations to use labour market and skills data to inform provision planning and delivery and strategy more generally. So I think it's a pretty timely session. Hopefully you agree and you benefit from it. So we'll cover off a few things in today's session, including a reminder of the impact that COVID has had and continues to have on the labour market, why regional insight is vitally important right now more than ever, and why understanding the skills requirements of different types of jobs is going to help you. And then just to finish up, I'll flag a couple of ways in which MZ can help via our FE Analyst tool and our emerging consultancy offer. So before we get onto those main agenda points, a very quick introduction to MZ for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We are a global labour market data firm. Excuse me, headquartered in the USA with operations in a number of countries, including here in the UK. And our very focused mission is about spending our time to invest in solid, reliable labour market data and then providing that data to you so you can make more informed decisions to help your business and then ultimately to help individuals, educators and employers all connect together more closely using the language of skills. To get into the main part of the webinar then, let's kick off with a bit of scene setting as to why labour market and skills data is really important for planning and strategy right now. And to do that, let's start by reminding ourselves of the unique and the ongoing impact that COVID-19 has been having on labour markets right across the UK. So here on screen, we see trends in employer recruitment activity across the devolved nations and the regions of the UK throughout 2020. So we saw at the beginning of 2020, it started off pretty normally and was looking pretty nice. And then from the beginning of the crisis in March, in pretty much all areas, we saw employer demand and employer recruitment activity pretty much drop off a cliff edge. That really happened everywhere. And then we did start to see a bit of an uptick towards the end of the calendar year as we approached Christmas and some restrictions were lifted. But unfortunately, as we see on this slide, the reintroduction of restrictions has brought ongoing issues to the majority of regions and devolved nations. And we've seen another downturn in employer demand from November through to now. What we also saw towards the end of 2020, from Q3 onwards, was that this ongoing labour market disruption was beginning to show through as actual job losses, with redundancies, albeit perhaps not to any disastrous levels as yet in the grand scheme of things, most likely because of the ongoing support via the furlough scheme and other support packages available. But we are starting to see actual job losses, unfortunately, in all areas. In that context, and I'm not going to talk any more about COVID, let's turn our thoughts to curriculum planning and bidding opportunities right now, and how MZ data can help you with that. And of course, there isn't a single one-size-fits-all approach to using MZ data in your strategic planning and your curriculum planning and your tender responses. But there are some general fundamental starting points that we advise through our MZ Learn program, and I'll just flash up a couple of those. Sometimes if you jump too quickly into the detail around labour market data and skills data, you can run the risk of missing the wider context. So we always advise to take a look at the bigger picture to start with, and to see whether any regional or local dynamics are unique, or perhaps whether they are indicative of national trends, for example. And likewise, it's always useful to begin with to familiarise yourself with the wider industry and occupational job picture in your local area and your local region before starting to dig down into more detail. And we'll see why taking this staged approach and taking the sort of general overview to begin with, as well as then digging into the data, is a sensible approach later on when I show a real life example. Next, I'd like to illustrate and move on as to why having access to localized data is really important when you're thinking about your curriculum development and your bidding opportunities, and why perhaps that's more important now than ever. So as an example, if we take a look at the 20 jobs that have been in most demand across the last 6 months of 2020 in two distinct but similar sized cities in the UK. So firstly, Liverpool. In that second half of 2020, we saw quite a broad range of jobs here that were most in demand from employers in Liverpool. Quite a concentration there of health and care related jobs, perhaps unsurprisingly given everything we've been going through. If we then compare that same time period for Edinburgh, as we see in this chart, the 20 jobs that have been in most demand for the second half of 2020 in that city. A couple of interesting things for me. Here we see there are 9 of the 20 jobs appearing on both lists. So quite a few of the care related jobs and some of the frontline jobs like cleaners, teachers, they're appearing on both lists. But then if you look at Edinburgh, you'll see quite a definite focus of demand around IT, digital and technical jobs there. So just a quick example here of why it's really important to get an understanding of local job dynamics specific to your local area, because there really will be at least some locally specific demands at a job level. And having too high level data in isolation, so be it national only data, or maybe if you just looked at industry data too generally, that really isn't going to be helpful for you when you're planning provision and looking to develop fully informed tender responses, because you can often miss some of the regional and local nuances at a job level. Remaining on that same theme, understanding the specific skills that are in demand in your local region is also vitally important. And to illustrate this, we can look at how different jobs within the same region will have very different skill demands. So for this example, we're going to look at the southeast of England, and we'll use that same 6-month period from July 2020 through to the end of 2020. So firstly, if we look at jobs categorized as managerial and professional, usually those jobs that are most highly paid in the labour market. What we see on screen here is the 10 skills that were in most demand from employers in the Southeast for those jobs across the second half of 2020. If we then compare that with customer service, process and elementary jobs, so entry-level jobs and those jobs that are typically paid the least in a labour market, we can see a couple of skills appearing in both lists, so it's obviously useful to be able to sell things, but actually the lists are really very different, and that's not surprising. We see very different skills in demand for very different jobs. So I'd pose the question to you, do you understand this level of detail for the geographic locality or the region in which you work, or the regions in which you work, and for the types of jobs that you're training people for? If not, this is the exact kind of thing that EMSI can help you with. If we now move on and take a step further, we'll zoom in on a specific example in a little bit more detail. So we're going to use digital as an example, and digital is a word which comes up in pretty much every conversation I'm having at the minute with providers and organisations across all different types of sectors. And also we know it's the focus of a number of tender bidding opportunities right now. So for example, those skills boot camps that I'm sure many of you are working on right now. We at EMSI recently did some work with the South Central Institute of Technology in England, who are doing some really great things in detailed planning around digital pathways. And so I've picked a few headlines out from that work, because I think it's actually really an instructive example about how detail can help when you're planning your strategic curriculum, and you're planning your curriculum to be responsive, and indeed when you're responding to some of those tenders that I've mentioned. So firstly then, what we see from that work is that the digital sector in its entirety is actually really broad and cuts across some 14 or 15 existing sub-industry sectors in the UK, which you see listed down on the right hand side here. So each of those industry subsectors that exist are of different size and scale, and the job numbers listed in blue there, they aren't just digital specific jobs, but they include a range of other jobs. So for example, the first subsector there, computer consultancy activities, yes, that subsector will employ lots of people in digital specific jobs, but it will also employ people such as HR professionals and admin professionals, and a varied range of other jobs as well. So the digital sector itself, as well as every other sector, is very diverse. Next, if we look at more specifically about jobs themselves that we might obviously categorize as digital jobs, digital and IT jobs, so those listed down the left-hand side here, what we actually see is that large volumes of these jobs, so large volumes of digital and IT jobs, are actually employed in other industries. So they're not just employed in the digital industries themselves. So what this slide is showing here is, in the orange portion of each bar, that's the number of jobs which are employed in the digital sector in the region of interest, so the South Central area of the UK. And then the blue section of each bar, that shows the volume of those same jobs that are employed outside of the digital sector directly. So this is really interesting. So in other words, digital and IT jobs are employed across a wide range of sectors. So therefore, digital skills are absolutely needed across an array of sectors, not just within the digital sector itself. And an example that jumped out at me on this slide here, so just about halfway down the chart on screen, we see there that there are actually more IT specialist managers employed in jobs outside of the digital sector than within the digital sector itself. So lots of jobs across a wide range of sectors absolutely do need digital skills, and you can apply this same methodology to pretty much every other sector category that you might think of. Then the final thing I wanted to show from the digital report, and do let me know if you'd like a copy, is that the folks at the Institute of Technology have done some really exciting stuff unpicking and mapping skills needs. And what they have done here, as you can see, is established 5 distinct digital pathways, which are listed along the top of the table in blue, And those digital pathways have their own specific skills needs. And you can see those skills needs listed out for each pathway, which are the skills that are needed if you're heading down that pathway towards related jobs. So some really innovative and exciting curriculum development and planning going on here with the guys at the Institute of Technology, led by Milton Keynes College, and some really innovative use of MZ data to help inform their planning, which I think is really exciting. Moving on from that then, the good news is that our FE Analyst tool can get you direct access to this data. So that's going to get you access to detailed granular labour market and skills data so that you can be accessing and using that data on an ongoing basis whenever you need to do so. I'm not going to run through FE Analyst in its entirety. I'm just going to highlight a couple of areas of the tool that are particularly useful in curriculum planning. But I'm sure you'll see how the tool is equally useful when you're working on bids and also for your employer engagement and business development work. For those of you who haven't seen FE Analyst before, this is a nice visual representation here of the key workflows and the key reports that sit within the tool. So there's a clear, easy to follow direction between that high level economy overview and the economy overview report that we see on the right hand side. And having that higher level view to start with, as I mentioned earlier on, is always a recommended place to start. Then we can see how that high level economy and labour market overview looks against your curriculum. So how does your curriculum plan map against those labour market wide job and skills needs? Then the tool allows you to move on towards the right hand side of the screen here to dig deeper into existing courses, so to validate if the demand is there for your existing courses and your existing plans, or to use the course design report to test new ideas, to test whether there is demand for jobs and skills using the array of data that MZ holds and which sits behind FE Analyst. So I'm just going to quickly highlight a couple of these reports that I've mentioned there. Firstly, the curriculum overview report. So that allows you to have your curriculum data uploaded into the tool, and then to see at department level how your learner numbers stack up against related jobs. So is there an undersupply? Is there an oversupply? Is there an area there that you should be concentrating on looking in more detail? So an example you see on screen here with some dummy data in there. So for this institution, for each course department area, how many students do they have in those departments, and how does that map up against annual job openings for related jobs? As I mentioned, you can then explore those individually to validate that there is job demand related to your course offering, either existing or planned. Then the other report I just want to flag is the course design report, which is all about understanding skill needs for different curriculum areas, or understanding skill needs for different industry sectors and specific jobs in your local area. And we saw earlier through the digital example how important it was to understand detail of where jobs are, where are jobs located in different industry sectors, where are they located geographically, and what are the specific skill needs for those jobs, and who indeed are the employers that are recruiting to those jobs in your area. That's what this tool and these reports are going to tell you. So using the course design report, if I stick with that same digital theme from earlier, I can search in that report for a particular skill. So in this example, I've gone for the programming language Java. So FE Analyst will then tell me how many jobs there are locally that require that skill, how those jobs are trending, how much are people being paid. And then we can start to identify for those jobs which other hard or technical skills are needed alongside Java, which was my search term. And you can see there's an array of other programming specific hard and technical skills that are needed for those jobs in this particular region that I've searched for. And equally importantly, for those same jobs, what are the human or cross-cutting skills that employers in this local region are demanding? So getting a view of how the hard technical skills are needed and how you can respond through provision to enable people to gain those skills, but also to understand what are the more cross-cutting interpersonal skills perhaps that are needed in those same jobs, which we all know is equally important. Now, if you haven't already got Analyst or FE Analyst, then let's do have a conversation and I can take you through the tool in a lot more detail. The final thing I wanted to cover off today was to encourage you to consider the wider impacts that you have. So when you're thinking about ensuring that your strategy and your planning and your provision is meeting the needs of your community, we actually have some new consultancy reports that can help you to measure and articulate some of that in a very clear way. So firstly, we hear quite a lot about the wider social value of education and training and the importance of things like community engagement, community cohesion, etc. And of course, these issues are going to be even more important as this crisis continues and certain communities and certain individuals perhaps suffer more and are employed in jobs that are even more risky than they've always been. So we can help you to articulate how you both reach those individuals through your provision and how you can describe what their course choice means in terms of their future employment potential, which might allow you to both validate what you're already doing and demonstrate how important you are to your local community and your local region, but also might point you in the direction of some areas where you might want to focus more efforts. Similarly, for the different priority sectors in a region, and that might mean national priority sectors or LEP priority sectors, or indeed any other sectors that you focus on as an organisation, we can help you to better understand your mix of provision in providing both job-ready, fully qualified workers who can leave your organisation and be fully employable, but also the high volumes of learners, particularly that colleges and training providers deliver to, who might not necessarily be ready to step directly into certain jobs, particularly higher skilled jobs, but are being primed at high volumes as the future pipeline workers for those jobs, which is a really important thing, I think, for the FE sector in particular. So we have brand new reports that cover all of that. Watch out for more information coming from MSI soon on those reports and how you can access them. And then in addition to that, in this time of upheaval, we all know that FE and HE and other providers are being challenged more and more on outcomes. So why not use our economic impact analysis to fight your corner and demonstrate how much economic income you actually support in your region? So how do you support all learners to improve their earning potential across their career? How you provide a positive return on the funding that you get annually from government? How the money you spend on buildings and staff and wages supports local economic activity in the short term, and then how the training you provide creates an ongoing, yearly, recurring flow of more productive workers into the local labour market and local economy, and what amount of economic income is generated from that. We can help you shout about all of this, and we're really, really passionate about doing so. So I genuinely would welcome a chat with you about how we can make that happen for you. So to summarise, the UK labour market absolutely continues to experience significant upheaval, both overall and at a low level, at a regional level. That means that understanding the detail that sits beneath the headline is more important now than ever before, whether that be for curriculum planning or employer engagement or bid writing. We have the tools to help you with that through our FE Analyst tool and through our various consultancy reports to help you both articulate the impacts and relevance and intent that you already have, but also perhaps to lead you in the direction of what you should be providing and where you might want to tweak some of your provision to more accurately meet what the local labour market needs. To help with that and to help kickstart your thinking and planning, we do have free reports available. So at regional or local level based on LEPs and local authorities. We have a free report available to bring you up to speed with what 2020 looked like and what 2021 might be hinting towards based on which industries and jobs are most exposed in your region. You'll receive a link to request that report if you haven't already requested a report when we send out the recording of this webinar, as Debbie mentioned earlier on. Then we also do have an option to purchase a more detailed local summary report, and of course those additional consultancy reports that I've just ran through there in an earlier slide and that I mentioned earlier are brand new, and we'll be publishing more information on them shortly. Happy to chat with you about all of those to identify which might be most useful to you. And then, as you see on the right hand side here, as I highlighted earlier in a brief highlight of a couple of areas, subscribing to our FE Analyst tool, that's going to give you direct and ongoing access to MSI's labour market and skills data. Let's have a chat individually about how we can make that happen for you. We can have you up and running with FE Analyst within 24 hours. So we are absolutely here to help, and we are very pleased to do so through the labour market and skills data that we hold and the experience across the UK team in helping you to articulate your impact, align your curriculum, and then deliver that employability and skills insight. Do please drop me a line with any questions from today's session. As Debbie mentioned earlier, any questions that have came in via the GoToWebinar questions panel, we'll answer those individually as part of our follow-ups. We do indeed have another webinar running next week, so Wednesday the 27th of January at 1 p.m, where myself and our Director of Economic Development, Will Cookson, will be talking about how our experiences of the FE sector and LEPs working together are boding well for the future. I do hope you can join us for that, and again we'll have published sign up information so you can register for that webinar. But that's it from me. All that's left to say is thanks, Debbie, for hosting with me, and thank you all for joining today's MSI webinar. Hope you found it useful, and I look forward to following up with you all shortly.